So if you're trying to learn how to code or become a web developer, I figured I would make a video to kind of teach you some of the things that I have learned along the way to become more productive at coding and just problem solving and becoming a better engineer. So I first started learning a little bit about coding back in 2009. And again, you have to keep in mind where we're at now, which is 2025. We got like all this cool stuff with AI, LLMs that are basically just answering all the questions for you. Let's kind of go back to the beginning. All right, so 2009, this is when I first got into college. I was doing my computer science degree. You know, you learn a little bit about like Java, you learn about C and how like memory works and how you can like use arrays to represent strings. I think I also played around a little bit with PHP at this point. When you had to learn about databases, I had to make like an API to connect to the database. But again, this video isn't about like my history. It's about how have I learned how to be more productive. And back in this time, I'll just go ahead and throw JavaScript in here as well. When you're learning the language and learning how to program, the most important thing that I found back in this day was memorizing the syntax, right? The more that you have the syntax in the standard library completely memorized to as much as you can, the more productive you're going to be, not only in writing code, but also reading code. Okay? If you don't have to like take a second to think, okay, what does a dot reduce function do on the array prototype? Or like, what does the map function do? When that is just like common knowledge to your brain and like instantly you understand what it's doing, you will become more productive because you don't have to waste your brain capacity trying to understand code. If you've been coding for any time, one thing you will start to realize real fast is that you only have a set capacity on your brain power, right? You can only code and like think and problem solve for so many hours in the day before you start seeing a lot of diminishing returns, right? After about 8 hours of staring at a computer screen, trying to solve problems, it just becomes very, very hard by the end of the day. And so I think doing some type of breaks in between your coding sessions or your deep problem solving sessions could be very beneficial. And I've actually found that a lot of the bugs that I've encountered, like that I've spent the whole day trying to bash my head around, I will take a break and I'll come back the next morning and magically the solution comes to my head, right? So let me just go ahead and write down the tips. I'm going to say, understand the syntax. Okay, so if you're using JavaScript, you should know what a reduce function is, a map function is. You should understand like the object prototype, the array prototype. You should understand all the methods that are on the string, how to do for loops, how to do for each loops, how to manipulate the DOM, what objects exist on the DOM model. I could keep going. There's a lot of stuff that you need to understand. And honestly, I'd probably even say memorize here, right? And this also includes learn the standard lib for whatever you're using. If you're using PHP, then you need to understand all the methods that you can use to get request headers, to set request headers, etc. For every minute you waste having to go to the documentation to look something up, that's a minute you could have saved by just memorizing it. Now, in this day and age, you might be like, well, why would you memorize it? AI can answer all questions like instantly. I will say that when you're trying to read through code, if you don't truly understand the syntax or the standard library methods and what they do, you have to actually stop and like spend a bunch of time thinking. And remember, at the end of that 8-hour workday, you're going to be tired. You are not going to be able to think as clearly as at the beginning. And so just reducing the amount of thinking power you have to do is going to always increase your productivity. I will warn you, this video is going to be all over the place. Okay, so going back to 2009, I was kind of heavily focused on dynamic languages, okay? And I've also using like IDEs that kind of suck, like Sublime Text Editor. I don't remember if it actually had like IntelliSense and autocomplete. So when you're using an IDE that doesn't autocomplete your code, this is another argument as to why you should probably have stuff memorized, because you're not going to have this like modal pop up and say, this is the reduce function. You hover over it and it has all the JS docs explaining, what it does. You don't have that back then. In this day and age, I would say that you should probably have an IDE that has all the power for doing refactoring and for giving you the IntelliSense and the autocomplete and the docs inside the IDE. If you don't have that, you need to switch your IDE and find something that has that. Like even for like PHP, you should probably be using like PHP Storm. There's a ton of other IDEs out there that you should probably check out. But leading off of that point where back in 2009, you actually had to write your own code, right? You actually had to type your fingers on a keyboard. That's much different than how we are now with AI basically just churning out code for us. But back then, getting good at typing. So I'm going to say typing accuracy and speed. Now, some people like to complain about this and argue that, oh, it doesn't matter if you're accurate. Most of the time coding is spent in thinking. It does matter. I've seen people who are very bad at typing and they type very slowly. And for them to implement a simple function that should have taken like maybe a minute, it turns into 10 minutes. And over time, if you don't type fast and you're not accurate and you keep on hitting the backspace to correct what you're typing, or you just forget an S when you're trying to reference a variable that is named dogs instead of dog, and then you have a bug that you have to debug for another 10 or 15 minutes because you just forgot that little character when you were writing with your garbage dynamic language. So typing accuracy and speed, and honestly, the better and faster you get at this, the more productive you're going to be, like not only just for coding, but like navigating Word documents, trying to search through PDFs, trying to talk to your teammates in Slack or Discord or whatever, messaging application you use. The faster you get and the more accurate you are at typing, the less time you spend doing it. Now, in this day and age, honestly, using some type of like voice to text could probably be very beneficial. I mean, there's one built directly into the MacBook. You just double click like the FN function and it kind of like starts translating what you type and puts it in the text. But you can respond a lot quicker in voice than you can with typing. And if you're one of those people who just isn't good at typing, really double down on like voice to text for just either whether you're like prompting AI over here or, obviously you can't use it for code because there's so many special characters in code, but you get the idea. Okay, so again, back in 2009 and 2013, there wasn't much resources online. Like the way you had to learn to code was literally either go to like Stack Overflow, which I think existed around that time, or you have to go to like forums, like, those old school PHP BB forums where people kind of discuss and, solve problems. You have to go there, or you'd have to go and read the doc. So right now, if you're going to get into web development or coding or become an engineer, you need to get good at reading. Honestly, I would probably say put this at the top of everything. Like if you didn't spend a lot of time as a kid trying to learn how to read and like becoming efficient at reading, I would say you should probably focusing on this because the amount of documentation you are going to read in this career is a lot. Every time you have to learn a new framework or a language or integrate something with AWS or other cloud services, you are going to be reading and reading and reading. And the less time you waste reading, the faster you're going to be, right? The more productive you're going to be. Let me just tell you, I'm not good at reading. I'm very bad at reading. I often skip the docs because when I'm reading, I find myself I have to read the same line like 3 times. I've gotten a lot better over the years from this, but like back in high school and college, man, like I would have to literally keep reading the same line over and over again before it actually got like stuck into my head. So if you're not good at reading, I would highly suggest get good at reading, get good at using your computer, right? Master the PC or the laptop or the OS, whatever you're using. If you're using a trackpad, master it. Get good at clicking things without misclicking. Get good at learning shortcuts, right? Be able to switch through tabs by learning the shortcuts. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put learn shortcuts. And this also applies to the IDE. Like when you're coding, if you want to do the legacy type of coding, the old school coding where you actually have to type with your keyboard, you have to be able to fuzzy search files. Like if I want to go to the privacy policy page, I could just go ahead and fuzzy search right to it. I want to go to a certain line, like you should know these shortcuts so you can quickly find things that you're looking for. If you want to find, like, for example, where I'm using the header, boom, I just found the 2 areas where I'm using a header. It looks like it's used here. I can actually go into this. I can do an F12. I can see all the references. My point is get good at the shortcuts. The more you learn the shortcuts, whether it's Vim, NeoVim, VS Code, Sublime Text, you need to know the shortcuts for your browser. Like try to learn as many as you can, like opening new tabs, closing tabs, navigating through tabs, all that type of stuff. Your IDE or your terminal, like make sure that you know all the commands for your terminal. That's very important, especially when you get into more advanced stuff like backend engineering or DevOps engineering. Knowing all the clear commands, the PS commands, the LS commands, the PWD commands, all this type of stuff will just make you a more efficient and productive coder. So also I'm going to say learn terminal commands, LS, PS, whatever, SSH tunneling, All right, we're getting a pretty good list. We're making some progress. So let me go back to my timeline, and we're going to talk a little about when I first got my job in 2013. It was a lot of Java development. Let me also put like my other job here. This is more like CoffeeScript. We had TypeScript with AngularJS. Like stuff started becoming really popping around this time. And then like, let's fast forward to today. I'm actually doing Wagtail and Django Python stuff on my current project at work. But before that, we were doing like React, TypeScript, Node. Let me just go ahead and put this like 2019 or something. My point is that I played around with a lot of different stuff, and everything in this area was actually like I was getting paid for it, right? Getting paid full time to work on this stuff, actually paid to learn is how I like to call your career. You're going to be paid to learn in exchange for you got to kind of ship a couple features along the way. You know what I'm saying? All right, I'm going to add a little icon. This will be me on my little journey. So like I kind of, was in college, learned about Java and C and PHP and JavaScript and databases and then trying to build my own side projects with like the LAMP stack. You guys remember that? Good stack to learn. But overall, the way that I became productive during this period, I'm going to add another section over here. I'm going to go ahead and say Google searching, or just whatever search engine of your choice at the time. This was a huge skill all the way up until AI. When did AI come out? I thought like Copilot came out in like, I don't know, 2020 or 2021. Anyway, this is like when the AI revolution started to become more prevalent, right? We started to have more AI tools like Copilot, and then we have LLMs that started getting better. We had OpenAI, all this other stuff that came out. And then eventually we got to today, which I'm actually going to go ahead and say 2024 is when Cursor came out. And I'm going to put this here because this was a pivotal shifting point in productivity for me. You all might not be using Windsurf or Cursor, but I will just say that this is a very, very important part that we're going to go ahead and talk about. So let's just go ahead and try to make this line green or something. Anyway, by this point, if you're not already confused with how much I'm jumping around, let's go back to the actual tips for productivity. Okay, so Google searching. Back in this time, this is how you found information, right? Google searching and then also Stack Overflow. This is like the big daddy of finding answers. So getting good at being able to parse through noise, I think, is a good way to summarize that. When you have to find an answer and you search Google and you get 3,000 results back, you have to become very proficient at like searching the first couple of links, like command clicking a bunch of tabs and then scanning through the text to try to figure out if the thing is even relevant to what you're trying to solve. A lot of the times you'll see search results, you'll click on an ad on accident, you'll go to a page that literally has nothing to do with what you're trying to solve. And so getting good at actually typing in your prompts, I'll say like prompting. And honestly, this still applies to today. Like, I mean, Google's still relevant. Getting good at typing a prompt and like actually wording it in such a way that the systems you're interacting with can understand and parse what you're asking and give you the right results. That's very important. So getting productive really means getting good at searching to find the answers. Let's just keep moving forward. This is like some of the stuff that I did at that time to like become more productive, and honestly, just coding, right? You cannot get away from just coding. You still have to do the old school legacy coding at this point. Like if you want to be good at software engineering, you got to code. And the only way to code is to solve problems. So coding and solving problems. And this could be like building out your own side projects. This could be trying to do leak code. You basically need to figure out a mindset where you can start solving as many problems as you can, because the more problems that you solve around this point, the easier it gets to solve problems around this point. In my opinion, knowledge is kind of like compound interest. The more you learn up front, the easier it is to start learning more later on in your life, in your career. Like it's just like you reach a point where stuff is no longer intimidating or confusing. You just read it, it clicks, you move on to the next thing, that clicks as well, you move on to the third thing, that clicks. And the reason is because you spent all this time learning how to read and understand and memorize the terminology and the syntax and whatever else you might need to be productive. And, fast forward 5 or 10 years in the future, and now it's like you can literally read all the docs and like it's super easy for you, okay? So if we move forward to 2015, this is where I got hired for my full-time remote job. And we were doing a lot of CoffeeScript, TypeScript, AngularJS. And one of the key things I want to point out here that really slingshotted my knowledge and my productivity is I started doing a lot of pair programming. Okay, so the company I work at really believes in pair programming, really believes in like joining a Zoom and coding with another developer for like 4 hours or even the whole day. I've even done like whole day sessions with people before, and every day we'll wake up, we'll join the Zoom. Of course, we'll have lunch and we'll have like little breaks here and there, but for the most part, we are going to be pair programming, which means that we take turns either screen sharing or, committing code to a repo and then someone else pulls it. and we'll like rotate every 20 minutes. So we're both fully engaged at all time. Now, for a lot of people, the idea of pair programming is like terrible. But I would say this was by far one of the best ways I was brought up to speed. I have to pair program with a bunch of intelligent engineers who were way more experienced than I was. Like I joined as like basically a junior at this point. I only had like a year and a half of experience during this little gap. And so when I joined, I was forced to work with a bunch of people who have already been working for like 5 or 10 years. And I will say pair programming is probably one of the main things that has brought me to where I am today. Just being able to work with other engineers and learn their shortcuts and their tool tips and their things that they use. And then also just like constantly having someone to ask questions so that I can really level up my game. That's like what made me who I am today. Honestly, I don't do as much pair programming as I do now. But if you are like a junior or a mid and there's a senior dev who's willing to pair program with you, like take that opportunity up. I know it's going to be kind of a pain and kind of like daunting at first, having someone watch you code. But like when you get over that, I feel like your productivity is going to go through the roof. Now, also during this time, I think one of the main ways you can become productive is having your own like knowledge base. And that would mean like, let's say you solved a bunch of different problems, in your previous years of working or like learning how to code. You should know how to find those projects very fast. You should know how to find the files in those projects that are relevant to the problem you're trying to solve so you can quickly copy and paste your own code to solve the project for whatever thing you're working on now. One thing I have seen in this industry is that typically the problems you solved last year, you are more than likely going to see them again this year. With a little bit of modifications, of course, different languages, different frameworks, but the idea is still there. And so being able to quickly find stuff and paste it into your code base and already have a decent amount of knowledge, it's still back there, but it kind of comes to the forefront when you start looking at your old code, and you can just be more productive grabbing stuff that you've already learned along the way. So building your own knowledge base, and this could be like notes as well. This could be getting good at bookmarking things and becoming organized. Let me put that one down. I'm going to say learn to be organized, because I will tell you, I am one of the most unorganized people you could probably meet. Like it's just hard for me to stay organized. Everything's a mess. Even this video, as I'm just rambling and talking and going from point to point. I know you guys think it's entertaining, but that's just really like my lack of organization skills coming to the forefront in a video. But if you can read books about this and just like train your mind to stay focused and organized and be able to quickly find that information that I kind of talked about, you are going to be at a very good productivity level. Also, learn to focus. Now, learn to focus and be organized. Maybe this is getting into the realms of like self-help and you're not really interested in learning that information. But I will say it's very important, right? Learning how to sit down and stare at a computer for 8 hours in your day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, year after year, up until like, you retire. It does require a certain type of ability. Like you need to be able to focus in on what you're trying to do and not get distracted by the random Slack messages that come in. Don't get distracted by, and if you work from home, your kids coming up and trying to ask you questions. If you can find strategies to really allow you to focus into the code, maybe that's music, maybe that's earplugs. I won't lie, at my first job, I had to wear earplugs because this was in a cubicle. And people would literally talk the whole time. Like there's people picking up their phones. There's people coming over and knocking on your cubicle wall when you're trying to focus on the code, and then you have to stop and then talk to them. Learning how to like quickly get back into the flow of things is going to make you very productive. And I can't like give you tips and tricks about this, or you have to figure out what works for you because everyone's mind works differently. But what works for me is either music in the background or putting earplugs in, or just like locking my door, so that the external things in my life can't distract me. But then also how to ramp back up. You can have like a sticky note on your desktop, which has like, what are you currently working on? Or even like writing down notes digitally somewhere, like on a whiteboard, right? Tracking what was the last thing that you did, so that when you have to like, come back and look at your computer, it's right there. Like that is what you're working on. Or go look at your Git diff and see what files you've changed, or find a way to make it so you can ramp back up into the flow of things very quickly. All right, so me traveling through my career, 2019, I got switched to a new project. And this is a project that actually got pretty big. This has almost reached 500,000 lines of code. I'll just say 500,000 lines of code, about 500,000 lines of code. I worked on this project since like 2018 all the way to 2024. So this is almost like 5 years or 6 years of me working on the same project and adding code from like literally we had no code at all and we kept on adding code, and I was on that project the whole time. It was a lot of fun. I learned a ton of stuff. I got to see what it's like to work with, 10 developers full-time over 6 or 5 years on a project that went from 0 lines of code all the way up to 500,000, and I learned a lot. But during this time, I will say one of the ways that you can become productive is knowing who to ask questions. So learn who to ask questions. When you're on a team and you have like 10 or 11 different engineers working with you, you start to realize who's good at what things, right? You'll have like the guy who's like the DevOps guy. You'll have a person who's really good at the accessibility. You have one person who's like really good at React or testing. He's like the one person that everyone just goes to and asks questions. So find those people, like make a list, and you'll get a feel for it if you work on a team with a decent amount of people, of who you can like reach out to and just ask these questions. Because I would say it's always good to have someone that you can talk to and get a firsthand response if you're lost or you're confused, especially if you're like a junior or a mid. One of the things I would recommend doing, like depending on your company that you work at, you should have a mentor. Like there should be some type of buddy, so a buddy system, which again, this might be out of your control, but it might be in your control. You can go and find a mentor. If you want to find a mentor, they can help you become very productive as well. But I think this topic is more for like businesses and companies. Honestly, when you onboard someone, you should probably have them work, closely with someone. Just one person, that's their buddy. They can go and ask whatever question to them, because I think when you first get hired to a job, you feel like you're kind of a burden to the team, right? You're still ramping up. You have a lot to learn. You have a lot of questions to ask, and it can feel kind of daunting. But when you actually have like some designated people that you can just be like one-on-one talking with and asking questions, it just kind of makes it a lot more positive and opens up the floor to getting feedback and getting help, versus like you don't know who to ask. You don't want to bother the really good like DevOps guy. He's like in his own world. Let's not bother him. No, it needs to be a collaborative environment. Everyone should needs to be helping people get brought up to speed. Anyway, where was I? So again, when you're on a very large project like this, you have to learn how to use your IDE. Like at some point, the tree browser literally becomes useless. Like you're going to have to learn how to navigate your code base without ever touching your tree browser. And typically that's using fuzzy searching or Command-Shift-F finding. One thing I forgot to mention is the browser. So DevTools, let me just say DevTools. So again, when you're coding, especially web development, this DevTools thing, you should know what every single tab does, and you should know how to turn on and turn off your caching, how to look at network requests, how to read through this, because the better you get at this, the better you're going to be at debugging your code. Which, let me just go ahead and put another one here, debugging. This, honestly, I'm going to put this in like gold or something, because this is like super important, debugging. Anyway, I can't make this in gold, so just keep that in mind. This is super important. And in order to get good at debugging, you have to learn how to think through what the computer's doing, right? And so adding console logs and adding break statements, getting really good at being able to step through code. Like in VS Code, there's an actual like debugger extension, if you've even looked at it, not bug finder, what's it called? Run and debug. So like you can run your Node code or your JavaScript code with the debugger attached, which allows you to step through the code line by line, understand how your variables are changing, understand how your system state is updating. But yeah, you should probably be learning how to use this. At some point, you will find that using console logs is actually just easier, because you don't have to wait for the debugger to launch and then hook up and then have to like, it just slows everything down. And so you'll get good at some point at when a bug gets sent to you and you're working on it, you can find very quickly like the relevant files, okay? And then once you find those files, you start getting good at finding the relevant functions and how the code is flowing through the system. And then you get good at like adding 1 or 2 console logs, and you can really pinpoint where the bug is. Maybe it's the console log, like what a variable is at that point in time. You run your code, you test it, and then you can basically figure out the issue pretty quickly that way. And debugging is one of those things that's like, you can't really learn it until you do it, right? You got to run into bugs. You have to spend hours bashing your head on your keyboard trying to figure out why something's not working. And then you find out that Chrome was like caching your application code instead of like clearing it. So it's like those little things that you're going to waste so much time on. But once you fix the bug, it's never going to haunt you again. Because when that one bug wasted like 2 full work days, and then you have like a sprint demo coming up and you actually want to like tell people you got stuff done, like getting good at debugging is like a must. Like you will never forget that bug, right? You will always remember in the back of your head, double check the cache. And honestly, getting like a checklist of like typical things you should look for when you're trying to debug. Like, is my cache disabled or enabled in my browser? Have I tried doing console logs? Have I tried double checking I don't have syntax errors? Have I tried this, that, and the other? Find a way or a system that helps you quickly move through the checklist, because there's a ton of bugs you're going to code up on accident because of simple mistakes. Most bugs, in my opinion, are probably from simple one-liner mistakes. And the faster you are at recognizing those and like, double checking your code, the more productive you're going to be. Okay, not just double check, but triple check your code that you write. Now, the reason this is important is because every bug you introduce into your system, it just eats up one developer's time, right? If it's a simple bug, here's a good example. Let's say that you write a for loop and you just mess up your I++ or something, or your like, I less than 10 operator. If you just spent an extra 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes reading through that code and finding that error before you try to ship it, imagine all of the time wasted where a user has to go submit a bug ticket, and then that bug ticket has to be triaged by someone, and then someone has to go through and verify that bug can be replicated. And once they have a plan or steps to replicate, they update the story, and then they ship that to a developer, and then the developer works on that, and then the developer ships it over to the testing team or the testing engineers or some type of person who verifies that it seems like it's working. And then sometimes they'll kick that back to you because you screwed it up even worse somehow. And so you keep doing this loop, and then you ship it back to testing, and then it gets approved, and then that goes off to someone to, give it the final seal, and then it gets deployed to production. That whole process, from you not just triple checking your code, added in a ton of work to your entire team, your entire system, your entire pipeline, where you probably should have been triple checking your code. And this brings me back to the pair programming. It's great when you're coding with someone and they are reading the code as you are both writing it. So the double checking is happening live. And then there's also something called mob programming, where you might have 3 or 4 people all in the same call, basically watching you code. And now you have 4 eyes all checking your code as it's being written. For every bug you slip into the system, it's just so much wasted time from every developer. And that last point is going to lead me to today, the AI revolution with Copilot and LLMs and Cursor. A lot of these things that I mention honestly get completely blown away if you just start using an IDE that has AI built into it. Now, this is not an ad for Cursor. I wish I invested in Cursor because I'd probably be rich. If you're not using Cursor or Windsurf, honestly, I don't know what to tell you. If you're in web development, that is, I don't know how this stuff works for other industries, but for web development, honestly, I don't think I'd even want to hire anyone on my company. Like if I owned my own company and they came to me and said, no, I don't use AI tooling, or no, I don't use Cursor, I would not want them on my team, just because I have seen such a huge productivity boost having at least tab completion, having something I can ask over my code base, having these agents that automatically just like plop code in and like can refactor my code. Like I feel like I've gotten a lot of mixed signals when I use too much AI on this channel, but I'll be completely honest with you. I even have 2 Cursor subscriptions, one for my personal laptop and one for work. And I use Cursor all day on everything I do, because I have seen, like, it saved me so much time. And the reason it saved me a lot of time, this is where we're going to go ahead and start deleting some of these things. So triple checking your code, you now have AI you can ask to basically check your code for you. Now, I do think you should still check your code. You should still do pull requests and have a peer review. But now you have something that checks your code after you write it and can just maybe say a sentence or two to say, hey, double check you didn't forget to add an auth middleware to your API, because it doesn't seem like you added one. You're like, oh crap, you're totally right. And so you add one in. This doesn't totally go away, but I'm going to delete it anyway. All right, debugging. This also kind of goes away a little bit. You still have to get good at using your dev tools and your debugger and console logging, but I will say that this thing has now become easier, because when an error gets thrown up to your screen, you literally copy and paste it from your, like, whatever you're using, you copy and paste it from here. and then you basically paste it into Cursor or an LLM, and then it gives you exactly what might be wrong. Now, it's not perfect every single time, but I have found that like my debugging time cycle has reduced tremendously. So I'm gonna go ahead and just remove debugging as well. Okay. Google searching and prompting. Now you can literally just ask AI right now when you're coding for whatever you want. It's going to go through the internet. It's going to give you back answers. And it's amazing. Like Stack Overflow, like isn't Stack Overflow basically dead at this point? What else can we have? Oh, knowledge base. There's so many AI tools right now that can basically vectorize like all of your notes. And so you can then start incorporating like an AI chatbot over all the things that you have. And your knowledge base is now like solved, right? And then this LLM basically knows everything for the most part, as long as it's up to date. So then this whole like, you need to track your knowledge base and the previous projects you worked on and like, your code snippets, that kind of goes away in my opinion. Typing accuracy and speed. Again, AI is writing the code for us now. So like we can just tab complete code. We can just have AI agents write the code for us. And now it doesn't really matter if you can type accurately or fast, because like literally you can just voice a text, the AI system, and it's going to go ahead and just change a bunch of code for you. Now, some people who are vibe coders, you don't even have to read the code anymore. That just completely goes away. Honestly, a lot of this stuff kind of goes away if you're a true vibe coder. You don't need to memorize anything because, the AI agent knows everything. Shortcuts aren't as important anymore because, again, if you're using vibe coding, why would you even need to dive through the code base? Okay, so at this point, I'm kind of like joking. I'm half joking, but I'm half being serious, because a lot of these things that like you used to actually have to spend time getting good at, such as typing accurate and fast or being able to debug stuff, like AI has basically changed a lot in this industry. Anyway, I know I've been kind of rambling for a very long time on this video. So like, what is my main point of this whole thing? At this point, if you want to be productive, you should probably be using some type of AI-enabled IDE. As, I don't know, maybe that's a bad take, but again, like this is like where I started in college, and then this is where I got a job, and now I'm all the way up to here. That's a decent amount of years of me wasting hours, if not days, debugging issues, weeks trying to implement things. There's a lot of experience under my belt, and I would say that the amount of productivity gains I have found by using Cursor, Windsurf, and all these other like coding IDEs has been pretty mind-blowing. Like V0 for like generating little prototypes. All right, let me just take a breath and wrap this video up, because I've been kind of rambling for a while, but I really hope that you guys enjoyed watching my tangents and my rambling, because I think there's a lot of good information here, right? Becoming productive at coding. So if you made it this far in the video, leave a comment with what you like to do to increase your productivity as a web developer or coder, and also put the message "Hello World" in the comment so that I know you actually made it this far. And then I will just have even more respect for you for watching a 40-minute video. Anyway, have a good day. Happy coding.